Hey everybody, Principal Kafele here with part two of So You Want to Be a Best-Selling Author. Today's session will be the writing process. If you watched part one, then that was the planning process. Now we've got the writing process. And then in part three, we'll talk about publishing, the publishing process. And then in part four, we'll talk about the marketing process, marketing and distribution. So here we go. A lot to talk about, but I don't think it'll be quite as long as part one. But let's jump into it. So you want to write a book. So you want to be a best-selling author. And I do make the distinction, as I said in the previous video, between you want to write a book, you want to be a best-selling author. Those are not synonymous. They're two different things, two different entities. Anybody can write a book. You can write a book and let it sit down on the shelf. You can show it to your friends and family. And feel good about yourself that you have this book. You can do all those things. But on the other hand, you can write a bestseller, right? And see, that's something a little bit different, right? A bestseller means there's a lot of people that that read your book, right? So you got to ask yourself, which one do you want? So let me just adjust my camera a little bit before we get started. Just a little something right there. That looks good. Yeah, there we go. There we go. We doing all this in real time. I don't have to be super duper professional with these. I'm not even dressed that way. And matter of fact, let me draw attention to the shirt. I'm at promise, not at risk. This is an educational shirt. I was privileged and honored to speak at a conference in Lima, Ohio, where this was the theme. I'm at promise, not at risk. Not the label at risk is just a negative label to put on a youngster. So instead of at risk, because then the question becomes at risk of what, right? So instead of at risk, we say I'm at promise, at potential, at possible, that type of thing. So that's what I'm wearing. Wanted you to know what I'm wearing instead of being distracted trying to figure out what is that all about. For those of you who are not in the education space and may not understand the distinction between I'm at promise and I'm at risk. You're not at risk. You're always at promise, at possible, at most highly capable. Enough said. So we're talking about the writing process, and as I mentioned in the previous video, I said, and I'll put this on the screen for you. I said that the outline of your book is the starting place. That's it, the outline. So I want to go a little bit more in depth with that than I did in the previous. The previous we were just talking about planning, and I wanted to plant that in your mind. But now we're talking about the process of writing. Well, you can't go and just start writing because you got an idea. You could, some people do. Um, I would dare say some of them are probably successful with it, but I would also dare say that some of them probably have a little bit of a mess on their hands because they're just writing. They're just writing. And if they're self-published and don't have the oversight of an editor, then that just writing will become a published book. And then the reader will probably become very confused in trying to follow it because it's just writing, 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 which in the writing sense is comparable to in the speaking sense, rambling, right? You're just writing freely with no rhyme or no reason as to what is your purpose for writing. So here I say, and everyone's going to do this differently, but this I'm giving you my strategy because I'm not proclaiming that what I say is gospel. This is writing a best-selling book from the vantage point of Principal Kafele, a best-selling author, right? So these things, it's little pocket notebooks. I've got stacks of them down here. I only needed to show you one. And I kept these in my pocket, wherever I went. I didn't leave the house without it. I still try not to, but I guess I'm kind of catching up with the times and I'm starting to use my phone more than I have in the past as it relates to taking notes. But this was my thing for decades. Good friend of mine, family member named Scott Holloman, turned me on to always leaving home with this and this. And then somewhere along the way, I started using this as well. So But in the context of our discussion today, leaving home with this for what? Because now that I'm in this zone to write a book, I'm in this headspace to write a book. Well, I want to start thinking about what's going to be in that book. I may have a theme, I may have a target audience, but what am I going to say that's going to fill up page after page after page after page? What am I going to say that will give me several chapters, several subtopics? What am I going to say? See, I may not have that up here. I just may have this topic I want to write on, this theme I want to write on, but it's got to be more than that. I gotta be able to break this thing down into these segments, these segments, and that's your chapters and subtitles, right? So here I'd use my pocket notepad, and I would start an outline, and I would allot certain pages, or maybe just a particular pad, and then I'll distinguish this from another pad I may have that I'm jotting down different kinds of information, because I got a lot of different reasons to jot down a lot of different things as opposed to trying to memorize everything. So let's say that I designated a pad to just my outlining. So now I'm going to do just that. So I'll have the title, the proposed title, because it may not be the title, right? But the title in my head right now, right? Then yesterday I talked to you about that overarching question. I shouldn't say yesterday, but in video number one, I talked about that overarching question, or that underlying question that's going to guide my writing. Well, that's going to be in this outline as well. That's right there at the top with the title, right? So now I've got the title or prospective title. I've got the underlying question. Now I'll write the word introduction. I'm not going to fill out anything there because I don't know what the introduction is going to say just yet. But I just want to have it in my notes that I will be writing an introduction. See, I don't need to write dedication and acknowledgement and all that right now. That'll come. But I do want to just keep myself reminded that there will be an introduction. If there's certain thoughts that I may want to include in an introduction, I got this. And I can go ahead and insert those thoughts. It's not going to be the entire introduction. That could be a page or two or more, depending on the book. But there may be just certain thoughts that popped into my head, and I said, I don't want to lose that. That's powerful. That needs to be in the book. So I'm going to jot that in the pad immediately. Right. So and then I'll leave space to add more for the introduction. So I may leave several pages, and that's just for any notes, anything that may come up in my mind that I don't want to lose. Because see, one of the things I don't do ever, I probably used to when I was younger, and that's when I learned not to do it, not to repeat it. And that is to have a good thought, one of them $1 million ideas. And I don't mean monetarily, I just mean one of them big ideas, and then think I'm going to memorize it. Chances are you're not. Life's going to unfold and your mind's going to be on other things, and you may completely forget what that great idea was, that little itty bitty thing called idea. So I don't want to run that risk. So instead, I'm going to write it down. I'll have it here. So that may be portions of my intro. But then let me get to the book, and I'm going to write chapter 1 in the outline. See, we're talking about the starting place, and all it is a brainstorm. Right? So chapter 1, and I'll give it a title. Might just be temporary. That might not be the name, the title of the chapter once you get to actually writing the book. But for now, that's what I'm gonna give it. So now, as I go through my day, as I go through my days, and I come up with ideas, concepts, not content yet, just ideas that would fit under that particular chapter heading, then I'm going to list them. So idea 1, idea 2, thought 2, 3, thought 4, whatever. And as time goes on, it may not be that I brainstorm that list in one sitting. It may be over time, or if I'm really locked in, I could be on a flight. I could be in a hotel. I could be sitting right here because this is my desk, and I may have a lot of thoughts. And those have happened multiple times. So now let me write. And that's not to say you can't use your computer, your tablet, your phone, whatever. Some of my outlines, most of my outlines, they were these. But my more recent books, they were the phone. So I was literally writing it on the phone. So whatever whatever you use, that's really not an issue. That's a personal decision. But as I generate these thoughts, or as I see things, as I hear things, as I daydream things, right? As I deeply reflect on things, whatever's going to generate something in my mind, these ideas, these thoughts in my mind, I'm going to write them. And in this case, it might be under chapter one. But maybe I've thought about things that have nothing to do with what I have listed as chapter one, right? Maybe that chapter title is not consistent with certain thoughts that I'm having. Fine. Let me write a different chapter title and let me now put those thoughts under that. There does not have to be a sequence right now. So what may become chapter 8, I may have written as chapter 2, just so that I can put those thoughts under that heading. Are you following me? See, so all I'm doing, I'm ultimately creating a template so that once I feel that the template is complete, it's full, now I've got a skeleton, I've got a template, and all I have to do is fill in the blanks. That's all I have to do. Because the book for all intents and purposes, it's written now. It's written, but it's an outline. But now when you look at the outline, you have a strong sense of what the book is. Now it's just filling in content. And for me, I think that's the easy part. The template is the structure. It's just like when you see a building or a house being built, and they build the frame first, right? I guess they call that the superstructure. And then they start filling everything else in, and it becomes this beautiful building, this beautiful house. But first they've got these steel beams, right? So you see the outline of it. You see each level, each floor, right? So you see that, the beams, the floors. And you don't have a sense of the beauty, but you have a sense of the building in terms of its shape, right? Its height. You see that. So once that's up, now now the workers can begin to fill in the floors, right? So each level they can fill in with the rooms, the stairwell, the everything, because the structure's in place. Well, that's what this is. It's the structure. And you want to have that first, as opposed to just sitting down and starting to write. You start to write. I mean, I'm not going to discourage that, because I know that people do it. But I will say, in my strongest opinion, it is easier to write that book when you have a structure first. And keep in mind that with that structure, as I go to B, you're going to constantly be organizing it. It's not locked into whatever you had first. That may be just the way that your thoughts came in, and you listed them according to the time that the thoughts were coming in. But now that you've generated all these thoughts, all these ideas, now you may want to start organizing your outline, organizing your structure, so to speak, right? So maybe what you had, as I just said, as chapter 8 might become chapter 3, or what you had as chapter 1 really it would be better as the last chapter, right? Whatever it is. And we're not talking about in terms of your content yet. We're just talking about in terms of how you worded the chapter. Maybe that particular idea, maybe that's not something you want to open the book with in that opening chapter, for example. Maybe that's something that you want to come midway. Maybe you want to have a strong start in the book. So there's something that you wrote later on that hits you later on, weeks later, months later, days later, whatever it is, but you got that way down on the bottom of the outline and you said, "No, this is powerful. I need to open the book with this. I need something, I need an attention grabber that's going to grab their attention and hold their attention and inspire them to go to the next level." Right. So this thing is this outline is not fixed. It's not finite. Right. It's you can make adjustments. Right. You can organize it according to what works best for you. But see, ultimately, if you're using a pad, ultimately you want to transfer your outline to your computer that you're going to type your book on, because you want to be able to make those shifts. You can't do that in here now. Right now you need to go here so that you can do some cut and paste, some copy and paste, all that kind of thing. Right, which leads me to letter C. And we're by the way, we're only going to letter K. Right, so this is not going to be a long video. So revisions of the outline. So in your book, you're going to be doing a lot of revisions, a lot of editing. But in your outline, chances are you're going to do a lot of revisions there too. And trust me when I tell you, every book I wrote started with the outline. And I did a whole lot of revising, whole lot of editing with my outlines. I kept that thing in my pocket, man. It was on my mind. And let me tell you this as well. When I went to sleep at night, I kept it right next to the bed, because I may dream of something. Or I may be just laying there and thoughts are coming, man. Like I don't have the distractions of the world right now. I'm just laying in my bed, right? With no other sense of purpose but to lay in my bed and fall asleep, or I woke up because of their thoughts on my mind, because I got this book on my mind. Well, if I come up with that powerful thought, that $1 million idea, so to speak, once again, I got a pen and a pad next to my bed. So now I can take my pen and I can write whatever that thought is. And then later on, when I'm up and when I have time, now I can organize that. I may have just written it just to have it written. I may not have put it any place particular as it relates to the outline. But now once I'm really up and I'm alert, now I can structure that however I need to structure it. Right. So that's important. So keep that in mind. You're going to revise the outline. So you got the outline, you got to organize it, you got to revise it. So now, are you ready to write a book? And in this case, I'm talking about your mindset. See, your mindset has got to be right to write a book. Your attitude. You got to be locked in. It's like athletics. When a team when a player plays for a team, particularly a player that's really intent upon winning, they're locked in. They're in the zone. They want to win. An entertainer, such as an actor or an actress, a singer, a rapper, right? Whatever. When they're preparing, if they're getting ready to record an album, they're getting ready to prepare for a play, a movie, a television show, whatever it is. Typically, the great ones, they're really locked in. They're locked in. Doing these videos, I'm locked in. The work I do as a presenter, locked in. I'm locked in. So here I'm saying, yes, I'm an advocate of you being locked in, but also I understand that the world is real. So you have other responsibilities outside of writing a book. But you'll recall in video one, I said that for me, when it was time to actually write the book, not the outline, but when it was time to actually write the book, oh man, I told you those first two books, I'm in a hotel. I'm literally locked in. It's not figurative now. I'm locked in a room and I have no company. I got no television that's going to come on. There's a TV in the room, but I won't be turning that TV on. I won't be listening to any radio, any music, any nothing. Internet. I'm not going to keep up with social media. It's just me and that book. I am locked in because I want to make sure that my mind is clear in terms of me writing the best book that I can write, provide the best content that I can write. So we're talking about my mindset now. But if I don't have that luxury of being able to lock myself away somewhere in a room, then I'm telling you this: when it's time to write, that's when you got to lock in. You got to tell folks in your family, you got to let your friends know I got this major project I'm working on. I'm working on this book, and there are going to be certain times that I need to isolate myself. There are going to be certain times that I need to just be alone so that I can organize my thoughts, so that I can clear my mind, and I can write this book without distraction, right? Because distraction, you can miss some thoughts, you can miss some words when you're distracted by other things. So when I write mine, I'm not distracted because I don't have stimuli around me going on that's going to keep me from being focused on what's most important in that moment. And that's me writing the best book that I can write. That matters to me. Right. So I want you to keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Um, so your mindset. Are you ready to write a book? Are you of the mindset that you're gonna be able to write the best book you can write? Like, what's your thinking? What's your attitude? Because imagine, you approach it just like sports. Imagine you've got an attitude or a mindset where you're unsure of yourself. Like, I don't know if I could write that book. Well, that's not the right mindset to write a book. Like every time I write a book, my mind is here's my mind. I'm giving this book, I'm giving these pages on this computer, I'm giving them everything I've got. That's my mindset. I'm giving this book everything I've got. I'm going to pour it in so that when I'm finished, I got nothing left inside. I can look at that book when it's a finished product and say, I left no stones unturned. I gave everything I've got in terms of what's here and what's here. I gave I gave this book everything. See, that's the mindset that I always have when I write. When I speak, that's the mindset I have. I'm leaving everything on that stage, man. I'm giving my all. I don't care how many people in the audience. I don't care if I feel like the audience is not with me. It doesn't matter. I'm giving everything I've got. That's how you got to approach that, y'all. Your mindset. Let's go. Letter E. What will be your sequence in writing? I'm gonna tell you again. Just as that, I mean, if you're writing for information, then you don't have to write the book as if you were writing a novel. So you're writing a novel, then you're writing a narrative. You're writing a story. But if you're writing, if this is informational writing, such as what I do, then I don't have to go in sequence. I can cover that which I just feel like this is the space, the headspace I'm in right now, and I will fully exhaust that. So it's like, let's say, for example, I showed you yesterday this book, The Equity and Social Justice Education 50. I might decide one of the chapters is dealing with culturally relevant pedagogy. Well, the way I approached that was culturally relevant pedagogy is going to be the book, so to speak, not in actuality. In other words, I'm going to go hard on just culturally relevant, I should say, culturally relevant pedagogy. I'm just going to go hard on that, and that's going to be my focus. Now there are several other chapters in the book, but I'm gonna pretend in my mind that that one chapter is the book. So that's all I'm doing, because in writing about culturally relevant pedagogy, it's not that I need to connect that to the other chapters in the book. There's a connection, but I don't have to write this. I don't have to write a certain sequence because there is no certain sequence with the various themes in this particular book. So the sequence will be ultimately whatever makes sense to me, whatever I feel I want them to read this first. But remember, You may set it up in a particular sequence, but the reader might go through your table of contents and find, "Ooh, let me use the same example. I want to read what the writer's saying about culturally relevant pedagogy first, because that speaks to me." The reader might say, "This speaks to my world." So I want to read that first. So I'm saying that to say, remember, your sequence may not be the reader's sequence. So you put together a sequence that makes sense, that gives you credibility, that type of thing, that doesn't confuse your reader, but ultimately your reader is going to determine their own sequence. But just think about what you feel would be best, and maybe that sequence that you write is going to be the sequence that they follow. But when you start seeing people with post-it notes in books, and they've got your book and it's post-its all over the place, that means that they're all over the place with your book. They're not just picking up your book and going from page 1 to page 150 or whatever it is, right? They're all over the place because there are different things of interest to them on different days. So you keep that in mind when you think about your sequence. Letter F, the revise and edit process. So now you've written a chapter. I think that there are several different schools of thought with what I'm about to say. With me, I don't do any revising until I've written the whole book. But I know that there are people out there that, well, I guess that may depend on the length of the book. You writing a 300-400 page book, you might not want to wait until you finish the book. I write short books because I'm an education writer and I'm writing for some of the busiest people in the world, educators. So educators outside of the summer months, and when I say educators, I really mean teachers, as far as the summer months, because the administrators really don't have a summer. They're working all summer and may have a week or two off. So I'm saying that to say the educator during the 10 months that they're in school, they probably don't have time to read a thick book, a thick education book, because they got the school, that's on the one hand, and then they got their lives on the other hand, right? They got their responsibilities. Teacher might have children at home, might have a spouse at home, might be a member of a gym, might be going to college, right? Might be members of other organizations that take up their time, and then all the time they spend preparing for school, and then all the time they spend with grading papers, etc. Right? So there's a lot there. So I'm not going to write a 300-400 page book and expect them to read it. So I write books. Here, look, let me get them on, like I did in video one. Let me just hold these up for you. Look at the spines. See, these are not thick books. These are not thick books at all. See, some people write a book. All of this would comprise one book. But my books, like this top book, The Equity and Social Justice Education 50, this is 150 pages. And these books are averaging about 150 pages. So, I guess that's considered short compared to what it could be. And that is highly deliberate. Deliberate. When I write, when I sign my contract with my publisher and they ask me how many words I want to write, typically I tell them 25,000 words, and 25,000 words will pretty much equate to about 150 pages. I used to write 50,000 words, and those books were longer. But those were my first two books with this particular publisher. But I stopped doing that. I'm 25,000. I can write it real quick, and the reader can read it quick and then use it as a guide. So I'm saying that to say this: because my books are short, about 150 pages, I don't even go through the revision until I've written the whole book, and then I go through the revision, and some of those chapters wind up being placed in different places, and then I'll make I'll write the transitions to make sure that the transition is smooth. But I'm revising literally every chapter. There's no way I'm gonna submit a chapter as I wrote it in a rough draft. No way in the world. Because the magic's not in it yet. Now I got to sprinkle that magic in it so that it's compelling, right? So that it attracts the interest of the reader, so that it draws the reader in. So I'm going to do all that because I want the reader to be interested and inspired and informed and feel empowered by what's being written. So I've got to make sure that the way I word it, the editor's going to do a lot of that. But before it gets to the editor, I want to make sure that I've presented it in a kind of way that the editor understands me, that the editor understands my style, the editor understands what I'm trying to convey and how I'm conveying it. That matters, right? That matters. So, with that said, um, you figure that part out. You know, you're gonna revise it by chapter, you're gonna revise it by book, but you're gonna have to revise, but you're also gonna have to edit. There's editing. Some of those sentences just might not be flowing right. Again, the editor will catch that, but you may want to catch it first because the editor may catch some grammatical flaws, but it may not be that it's a grammatical flaw. It may be that there's a certain way that you wanted to say something, and the editor doesn't necessarily pick up on it. So that this is your style, your brand, not a mistake. Like I had to literally teach my editors that when you see me being repetitive, I want that conveyed. When you see me putting a capital letters on certain words from time to time, when you see me putting dot 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 with certain at certain points in the book, I say to my editor, and my editor understands this. I want my reader. I want to defy the principles of writing in this regard. So here's what I mean by this. I want the reader to be able to hear me as a speaker. So let's say that the reader heard me speak before, particularly in a keynote address. I want the reader to feel the keynote. I hope that makes sense to you. I don't want to transition because they say you're not supposed to write as you speak. Well, I made a decision. I want to defy that. I want to write as I speak. I want people to read my books and to hear my voice when they're reading. So if they heard me bring a certain energy, a certain enthusiasm, a certain excitement, a certain passion, a certain drive, a certain determination, a certain power on that stage, I want them to feel that when they're reading me. And here's the beauty. The volume of people who have said to me, Principal Kafele, I felt your words in that book. I felt your energy in that book. I felt your passion in that book. And I said, thank you, because that's the intent. That's the intent. See? So consider that. Once again, the editor, they're going to revise, they're going to edit, and then the book will be given back to you for you to go through the revisions and edits. And in most cases, when you have a professional editor, they're going to ask you to make some adjustments. Right now, rookie me, I made all those adjustments. Seasoned me, a lot of times I said, nah, I don't want to adjust that. I want it just like I wrote it. So the adjustment that you made, I need you to put it back as it was. See, that's the difference between seasoned me and rookie me, right? Novice me. Rookie me was I just do what they say. But seasoned me, I knew what I wanted. I knew how I wanted that sentence to come across. I knew how I wanted that paragraph to come across. So therefore, I would say to them, "Nah, I need it just as it is." Now, if it's a grammatical issue, then obviously I'm going to make the shift, and we'll do it the way they want it done. But you got to work your way to get there. As a new writer, you may not be in position to have that negotiation. You may have to go with what the editor feels because the publisher is probably going to be backing the editor and not you, unless you're someone in high demand. Like the public is out here waiting for your book, clamoring for your book, and you're in high demand. Everybody wants to hear your words in this book. Well, then you may have some wiggle room. But if you're just unknown author, first time out, no one knows you, the publisher's probably going to support the editor, and your book is going to be that way. I have a couple of books, I'm not going to name them, that I'm not particularly proud of. They're bestsellers, but they're so editor heavy. They really are. They're so editor heavy that I don't even look at them. The most I look at them is the cover and the title page when I'm signing my autograph in it. But I will not thumb through and reminisce on something I wrote because it's when I was a newer I keep saying principal, when I was a newer author, and the editor had more say, than I felt they should. But my books now, like I guess the second half of my writing, oh, those are me. Those are authentically me. And you want to keep that in mind, particularly now, see, I didn't have the luxury of a video like this. I didn't have a luxury of a mentor when I was writing a book. I just wrote a book, right? I've never had a mentor. I had a mentor in the marketing phase, which I'm gonna talk to you about later in another video. The distribution, I had a mentor, but this part here, I had nothing. I just had to figure this out. And that's probably why I went so many books where I wasn't pleased with the content because I didn't feel it was me. Of course, I wrote the book, but I didn't feel my energy in the book. But now you have the luxury of this video, and now the internet is here. There was no internet when I wrote my first few books, right? It didn't exist. So you have the internet. There's a million other people with their thoughts and opinions on how to write a book. Here's mine, right? And now you have some flexibility that I did not have, right? So keep all that in mind. Let's go. Letter G. We're almost done, y'all. I told you this is a short one. At what stage of the process will you use an editor, right? Let's look at it. If you're self-published, you probably want to get an editor early on. If you're self-published and never done this before, because what you may think is good, it may be really bad. It could be really lousy. It could really kill your book. So you may want to get that professional early on to let you know if this is something that's good stuff, right? And in terms of how you formatted it, right? How you've laid it out, how you've written it. You may need that professional. Depends on you. Depends on your skill set, really. But as a publisher, when you use a publisher, when you submit that manuscript, it goes into the hands of the editor. So it's theirs at that point. And they'll be in communication with you. They'll be sending you chapters back and asking you what your thoughts are on the revisions and the edits that they made, or they may ask you to clarify some things, or they may ask you to add certain content. I mean, there's been plenty of books I've written where they wanted me to add whole pages, right? Add whole paragraphs or delete whole paragraphs, whatever, right? So, they feel that this is going to make it flow better than how I had it. Right now, that's not a lot. That's really not a part of my life too much now, right? Where I'm deleting paragraphs and writing pages and all that. But earlier on, yeah, that was part of it, and that was really the taxing part. That was the oh my god part. Like, oh my god, I got to do all this stuff. All these pages, all these red marks, right? And I got to insert this and delete that, and it was just a lot. But thank God that's a part of my past now. That's not a part of my present, as I've written 14 books to date, right? So, but at what stage of the process will you use an editor? I would say if you're new, have a professional nearby, someone that can guide you, so that you don't write a whole book and now you got to undo and unravel so much of it because it was a mess. And I'm gonna use that word very intentionally. There are books that people write. I know this, and the books are a mess, and they put them out there, and then the readers tell them that the book is a mess. How do I know that? Because they write it on Amazon. They write it in the comment section. Oh my God, this book's got this, that, and this. Is wrong. Is problematic, right? Grammar, whatever, right? So you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure you don't want to write a whole book and then the editor just unravels everything you wrote. Might want to spend a little extra money and have that editor working along with you, right? Um, and again, we talked about all that sequencing and how you may focus on certain chapters ahead of other chapters based on how you wrote the outline. So you want to keep that in mind, right? Also keep in mind, one might ask, how long should the chapters be? It's up to you. It boils down to how long your book is going to be. And if you're working with a publisher, again, we'll get to that in the next video. But if you're working with in part 3, if you're working with a publisher, you're already going to determine how many words the book is going to be. So now you've got to make sure that you get your whole book within those words, because that's finite, right? So I mean, they'll give you flexibility. If they give you, if you all decide 25,000 and you go to 30, I'm sure they won't mind because they're going to cut it down anyway. The reason that you determine a certain number of words, and then as they edit, they're going to slash a nice little percentage of them anyway to get it down to a certain number of words. It's going to be less than what you negotiated in your contract. Yes, this is how it works, right? So keep that in mind. At what stage of the process will you use an editor? Letter H. When will you write your introduction? I've always written my introduction after I wrote the book. Maybe one, I wrote the introduction first. I'm not sure. I'm kind of feeling like the book I keep showing you, the Equity and Social Justice Education 50. Matter of fact, I know I did. This book, I wrote the introduction first. And that was because if you didn't see video one, go back to video one so that you can get the history of why I wrote this book. I don't want to go through that again because I did it in video one. But in video one, I told you why I wrote this. There were specific reasons as to why I wrote this book. So I detailed those reasons in the introduction, right? So that's what the introduction was comprised of. So I wrote that introduction first. But most of these other books, I wrote the introduction later. I went right to the content, and then the content drove the introduction and the conclusion, right? So the conclusion is necessary. Because see, and I'll tell you this. I'm a speaker. It's one of the worst things you could do is have a great speech and a weak closing. Your closing got to be strong because your closing is going to be that thing they remember most, the way you closed it out. They're going to remember your content if it was good content, if it was relevant content. Make no mistake about it. But what you going to leave them with? What's going to be that lasting, that last thought, that lasting impression? So I always make sure that I leave with a bang, a solid closing. Well, that transfers to a conclusion in a book. You can't write a great book and then the conclusion is weak. That conclusion's got to be powerful. That conclusion might be a challenge, a thought you leave them with, right? Just leaving them with something that goes beyond just the content of the book. That's how I close my speeches. That's how I close my books, right? So you may leave them with something you want them to do. You may leave them with some kind of challenge. You may leave them with a powerful thought. You may leave them with a powerful idea. You may leave them with a powerful illustration, a narrative, a story, whatever. But just something that this upbeat, uplifting. So when they close that book out, it's like, whoo, that was powerful, that conclusion. See? So your intro's got to be strong because see, your intro could be weak and they never get to chapter one because they said, man, this book is not what I thought it was going to be. They had this dynamite title. And now this intro, it's not carrying me into chapter one. I don't think I want to read this book. See, that intro has got to grab their attention. It's got to be bam. Let's do that again. There you go. Got to get that sound right. Bam. It's got to be powerful. Keep that in mind. It's got to be so powerful that your reader can't wait to transition into chapter one because they know that that's going to be even more so powerful. Now, I'm not saying you got to write a charismatic book. Everything is not meant to be charismatic, but it's got to be engaging. It's got to be compelling. It's got to be interesting that they want to continue it, particularly if it's a thick book. And if you don't have those ingredients, then you it may not work out for you, right? So keep that in mind. Got three more sections. I told you this is a short one. Co-authoring, letter I, co-authoring. You gonna write your book solo, or you gonna have somebody write with you, right? That matters, right? I've never co-authored, and I don't see myself ever co-authoring. I have nothing against it. I just can't see myself and another author writing a book together. I know people do it. People in the music industry, collaborations, particularly rappers, they're always doing it, always, right? And I listen to some hip hop. I listen to hip hop that's constructive and productive, right? And the as they call them, the collabs, they're good, right? They're good. And I've read books that were co-authored, but I don't like them. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you, I'm not against it. I'm gonna just tell you why I don't like them. I do a Saturday morning live stream, and I'll just promote it real quick in case there's someone that's watching that doesn't know about it. The channel you're watching this video on is called the AP and New Principles Academy. Well, that channel was designed for that academy, which is a live stream every Saturday morning at 10:55 Eastern time, since the first Saturday in May 2020, and right now we're going into the 201st Saturday consecutively since I started. No, 202nd Saturday this coming Saturday. So I've been doing this for 202 consecutive Saturdays, right? So this I bring guests on, and some of my guests are co-authors. And sometimes I don't have both authors on that I'm going to interview. So now when I'm planning and I'm using their book, it's very difficult to plan because I don't expect that the author I have knows the other author's content the way they know their own. So now I got to go back and forth. Well, which part did you write? And maybe they both share the same chapter, and now we got to figure out what part of the chat. I don't have time for all that back and forth, right? So I don't get a lot of enjoyment out of interviewing co-authored authors for that reason, because it makes my research that much more time consuming, as opposed to I got a book, it's the one author, I know you wrote the whole book, so now I can pull from anything in that book as a question, a comment, a concern when we have this interview, right? But that's me. For you and somebody co-authoring, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because it's not. It's a good thing. And if you get with someone, the rappers, a lot of times someone on the come up, someone that's trying to get somewhere, trying to find their place, may have the opportunity to do a collaboration with a star, a superstar. And if they do, then more than likely their star is going to rise exponentially. So if you're an up and coming author, you're a new author, and you happen to know some author that's very credible. I guess that's why a lot of folks want to co-author with me, because I've been in this thing for a long time. Now, I got the nickname, they call me OG, right? A lot of people in the speaking business and the writing business. So a lot of people reach out to me, can we co-author a book? And these are people that no one knows them, but can we co-author a book? But I get it, because they want to have their name associated with my name, and that's going to help sell the book. So I'm not mad at them. I get it. I understand it. But I just don't want to do it. But maybe you do. But if you do, make sure you co-author with someone that does have name recognition, because if it's you, rookie, and the co-author's rookie, no one knows the two of you. And that may be a tough sale. Then you look at your rankings on Amazon, and you find yourself ranked number 1 million something, or number 2 million something, because that happens a lot with the unknown authors, because people don't know them, so they don't buy the books, right? Even though they got a good publisher, good publishing deal, cover looks really nice, topic is really great, but that name recognition, it factors in. Right. Doesn't mean that everybody that doesn't have name recognition doesn't do well. Because I could tell you some folks, I don't want to say their names on here because I don't know if they'd want their names on the video, but there's some folks that were extremely unknown who are now household through one book. Just one book made them household. I got a few folks in my head right now that they're much more widely known than I am. And I've been grinding it out for decades, and here they just came on the scene. But just the right book at the right time, right publisher, right publicity, all that kind of stuff, and bam, then they're household names. Work for them. But these were not co-authors. I'm making the point of unknown authors. Folks that just weren't known. They're known now. They world renowned, right? So just it's some of this stuff is just luck. If it's timing. So keep that in mind too. I got two more. Another form of writing is as told to. So I know a lot of these folks. So they're not the ones with the pen in their hand. They're just sitting back talking. right? And then the person that they're talking to is an author. This person's a writer. They're typically a very good writer. They may have written their own books, or they're just strong in English. They're strong in writing. But in as told to, so the book is still yours, but it's not going to be the only name on that cover. It's going to say your name and then as told to such and such. My first ad told to was Malcolm X, the autobiography of Malcolm X, as told to Alex Haley. Malcolm X didn't write a word in that book. He sat down and dictated that book to Alex Haley, who was the writer of Roots, and he put in Alex Haley put together a phenomenal classic, a phenomenal classic. But it was as told to. That's an option for you. And then lastly, ghostwriting. So now you don't write it, someone else writes it for you. Their name doesn't go on the book, on the cover. It's your name, but you really didn't write it. Some people do that because they just, for whatever the reason, someone else just writes better, has more time to write, whatever it is, whatever the reason. Could be a multiplicity of reasons, but the bottom line is they write for this person because this person's really not a writer. Everybody's not a writer. I wasn't a writer. I had to develop that skill, but it mattered to me. So because it mattered to me, I worked hard, I worked diligently to develop this thing which became my craft of writing. Now I do a heck of a lot of writing. I don't only write books, I write blog posts, I write commentaries, I write articles, right? I'm always writing. So as I'm closing out, I was gonna say, let me hold off until the fourth video because we're gonna get into that. But I'll say this, and then I'll repeat it. I'll go more in depth in video 4, where you can't just write a book, right? So you want to be a best-selling author, then you better be writing more than books because you got to get your name out there. You got to write blog posts. I told you on the previous video 1. Start yourself a blog page. You got to write articles for magazines and journals within your industry. So I'm in the education industry, so I write articles for magazines in the education in the education industry. I have one now. They just sent it back to me with the edits. See, there we go. So they just sent it. So now when I finish recording this video, then I got to go and read those edits and see what I need to do, or if it's going to be as is. They'll probably need to do something. So I'll do that, and they'll be published in a major publication in May of 2024. Right? That's how that works. So now that article will be in this major magazine, and it will give me more publicity, and that draws more attention to the books. So you cannot just write books. You got to write write in other mediums so that other people who may not be exposed to your book can be exposed to you different ways. And then, of course, in the article, you make reference to the fact that you have a book, right? That's always done at the end, or sometimes it has relevance in the content, but you'll have an opportunity to make the world know, the world that will see your article, your blog post, your commentary, that you have a book out. So you become your own publicity. So again, ghostwriting, that's there's a lot of people out there that do that. No one knows because the ghostwriter's name is not on the book. It's your name on the book. It's just that there's someone else who can write that book perhaps a little bit better than you can write it. And that takes me to the end. So I did this one in under an hour. So I'm saying to you again, the writing process. This one was shorter, but there's a whole lot of substance in this video. So I hope that you took notes. I hope you'll rewind it and watch it again, and just make sense of it. Take what you need, that which you don't feel you need, then leave it there, right? But that which you can use, and use it. Implement it. Implement that within your overall strategy of what you're trying to accomplish toward writing your best-selling book. Enough said. I'll see you in part 3, the publishing process.